Magic players will tell you that cards on the reserve list are basically unplayable. Like 90% just hold no value. They're not worth anything by today's standards. But what happens if they become valuable? What happens if that value grows because of a new card created? The better question is, can they have value? Hi everyone and welcome back. MTG Moxman here. Thanks again for hanging out with me on the channel today. You know, when you're thinking about valuable Magic cards and combinations, most people will think of high-priced Magic cards. They're going to think of Time Vault being mixed with Voltaic Key. But recently, cards like Mind Over Matter being mixed with the new One Ring caused other infinite kind of combinations you can build. And this isn't the first time. Right? People have gone ahead, they've used things like Thassa's Oracle with Paradigm Shift. I covered this in a video last week. Now, those are known combinations that players can buy, and they're not overly expensive even by today's standards. But there are many low-end reserve list cards, unloved, uncared about. Most people tell you the reserve list is garbage. 90% of the cards are worthless. They're $5 or under. Mind Over Matter was only a $20 card. A couple of years ago, it was only $12. A couple of years before that, it was $7, $8. It doesn't take much to break something on the reserve list, to make it spike. And that's why a lot of people used to speculate in that market and try to find those valuable cards. But it's not that hard to find them. And it's not that I know which cards will also become valuable. If it was, I'd be very rich. It's that you can look for certain keyword combinations. Magic has changed so much in the last 30 years. It's not the same game that was played at the beginning. The games aren't dragging out for an hour and a half per match. They can be over by turn 4. So if you're looking at a high casting cost card, it probably, unless you can sneak it out, it doesn't do a lot. But there are other infinite loops that can work with those cards. There's other small combinations that can be a lot of fun to pull off and later on could raise the value of low-end reserve list cards depending on how those combinations work out in the future. That's the funny thing about it. A card can be worthless until suddenly it's not. Until all of a sudden some combination gets found out by somebody brewing with a modern card and mixing it with an old reserve list card. And that's when that card gets bought out, jumps up in price, everyone loses their mind saying, look at this crazy combination. The real difference is you actually never know when that combination is going to be found, what card gets printed to break something or change something in that old reserve list card to make it suddenly valuable to the mass of players. To the masses out there saying, oh, I want to get that combination. But understanding that it could happen is the first step. Looking at a card and seeing something that the wording's a little bit off or it could lead to this kind of situation can lend you a little bit of an advantage over other people. It lets you buy a couple of these cards. At $2, $3, $4 a piece, you buy a play set, 16, 18, 20 bucks. You're not busting the bank, but you're getting a few cards put away just in case. And these cards may be playable on their own. They may still have a little bit of fun just by doing a few simple combinations inside of a casual EDH deck, but nothing too competitive. That's the interesting thing about the game is the value is not always monetary. It can also be play value. Pulling off a crazy combo when nobody expects it or hasn't seen it done before can be a very satisfying endeavor. So let's go through. Let's take a look at some fun cards today. Grab those nachos and cheese, sit back and relax. And remember, you never know when something's going to get broken, which is why when prices are this low, it's probably not a bad idea to grab a couple if you can afford it. Let's take a look. The first card I want to share with everyone is Volroth's Shapeshifter, okay? We're talking way back in Stronghold, but when you take a look at this card, remember, it's only $2.77 is the market average, but this card's been as high as 30 bucks. Let's take a look if it's worth it. 2 blue, 1 generic for a 0/1 Shapeshifter. It says, as long as the top card of your graveyard is a creature card, Volroth's Shapeshifter is a copy of that card, except Volroth's Shapeshifter retains its abilities. 2, choose and discard a card. Of course, that's to kind of get through your deck and get to some beautiful heavy creature. So maybe you want to discard a big bad beastie, put it in your graveyard, and turn Volroth into that thing you can't even cast. A lot of people I know would say, hey, think of a giant Eldrazi with like a massive amount of annihilation. and turn 3, turn 4, you're annihilating people, possibly even faster depending on your combinations. You're right. But this card also, it's benefited already by infinite combos. Okay, there's already a few. There's actually 3 or 4. I just put a couple here on the screen. Protein Hulk, Roa, Shapeshifter, Carrion Feeder. I left them up there so you guys can read them for a second, take a look. But that's how inexpensive an infinite combo can be. It doesn't have to be some huge beat out thing. The question you have to ask yourself, is a card like Volroth Shapeshifter worth $3? Is it worth 3? Is it worth 7? Is it worth 10? How much and how much value is in that card for its playability, versatility? Where does it see play, if anywhere? What are the potential of a card like this going up in the future? And that's where players will decide for themselves. Is it junk and worthless? I can't make it work. It's not going to have playability. I would argue that this card has playability and has value. It has the ability to add a fun dynamic to a game, something you're not going to expect. But not only that, is if you can use a simple combo, not even the infinite combo, if you can use simple combos like getting some big huge creature in your graveyard and surprising somebody with the Volroth Shapeshifter, say, hey, I'm going to discard this card. I don't know, I'm going to discard that 10/10 dinosaur god creature beastie. And then you go ahead and copy it with this guy and just go beat the living tar out of somebody. That's pretty funny. Okay, you also notice there, it isn't like it's a ability as a sorcery, so you can do it any time. So you could allow somebody to attack you with some giant beastie. You could just discard a big 10/10 creature, and this guy becomes a 10/10 giant creature and blocks that creature. You can do all kinds of crazy fun stuff. For $3, buying a playset of 4 for, say, $12 or $13 US, that seems really affordable to me. That doesn't seem like we're busting the bank. Now, the next card, Winter's Chill. This is like an old Ice Age card, but unlike most of these cards, this one's a little wacky out, okay? It's been like $12. It hasn't been super expensive. But what I find interesting, let me just move this over a smidgen for you guys. It's just my bad pathing there. So if you see there, a little bit over $11. But the interesting thing about this card is what it does. Winter's Chill is 1 blue plus X, okay? And it says, cast only during combat before defense is chosen. At the end of combat, destroy X attacking creatures. X cannot be greater than the number of snow-covered lands you control. For each attacking creature, its controller may pay 1 or 2 generic to prevent it from being destroyed in this way. If that player pays 1, the creature neither deals nor receives combat damage. If the player pays 2, that creature deals and receives combat damage as normal. So it's kind of crazy, right? You can save your creature in some cases or save it and have it deal damage. I think it's very unique because it's a blue board wipe for enemy creatures, but there are combinations you can use with this card. I myself pulled this off, and this is what I did. I used Mana Short. It was a Goblin tribal deck. They came at me, and before they were going to come, they put their creatures out to attack. And I used Mana Short to tap their mana. He didn't care. He went ahead, went to combat. His mana pool is emptied and drained. And then I used Winter Chill, and I wiped out a large portion of that Goblin army, and I felt fantastic. I wish it wasn't as mana intensive, because of course this deck I built has all snow-covered lands. But it was the idea that this card cost me $1. And I wiped out everything from a Goblin Wizard to Krenko to all kinds of craziness. And I had a blast doing it because he was tapped out and couldn't do anything. And that's a very simple combination for a couple of dollars. That is not going to break the bank, but its playability factor was fantastic. And nobody expects a blue board wipe. So he didn't care that I tapped his lands. He didn't care if he tapped out because he believed there was nothing in blue that could handle his goblins right now. And that's the funny factor of it. This card may not be the most expensive reserve list card, but what other combinations could come along to make this card more valuable? What other combinations come along to cards like this to make it a playable, enjoyable experience for you? Maybe not your opponent, but for you at least. And that's what I think is a fantastic thing. That's when you don't know what's coming down the pipeline. And that is going to be a memory I have forever, which is why I'm relaying it to you guys, because I played it, I lived it, I had a blast doing it. It's interesting stuff. Now, here we have Glacial Crevices from Ice Age. It's an old card, it's reserve list, and it's only $2.45 right now. So let's take a closer look and see if it has value. I mean, it's been as high as $15. So what's going on with this card? Now, Glacial Crevices is 1 red, 2 generic. It's an enchantment. It has 0 to use it. Sacrifice a snow-covered mountain. No creatures deal damage in combat this turn. Think about the effect. Think about the political nature of Commander. Now you got to sacrifice a snow-covered land. I know that can be a dicey endeavor, but there's also other things you can do here. You could take this card and you could use it with Crucible of Worlds. So you can play lands from your graveyard, which means you can bring back that snow-covered land. Now, maybe only one a turn, maybe you can find a way to finagle more out, but there are ways to stopping people attacking opponents you don't want hurt. There are ways of stopping yourself from getting it. It makes you a little more resilient. And people usually don't see this kind of combinations coming. It's very inexpensive. It works well in a Goblin deck. I mean, what a fantastic little combination that is not going to cost you a lot of money. Imagine that. Not a lot of cash invested here. And when you don't have to invest a lot of money, you're not risking a lot. It's not like you're spending $500-$600 for this reserve list card and you barely use it. You're only spending $2 or $3. And maybe you'll use it, maybe you won't. But maybe a more powerful combination blends in with these cards later. So I would argue it's better to have a low-end card that's considered worthless right now than have to try to buy it later if a combination is found and you are too late to get it. Why not spend $2 or $3 now as opposed to $100 and something on a card like Mind Over Matter now? It's a direct correlation to a combination being found, but you can get ahead of some of these just by owning some of the kind of basic cards out there. I've done videos on this for a very long time. I've experienced it myself in the past. You don't know what's coming down the pipe. Wizards of the Coast holds the key to all kinds of crazy combinations if they want them to exist, but they can't reprint those reserve list cards without angering the masses. So why not buy a couple for $5-6? That's my argument. Take it or leave it as you will. I'm going to keep buying the cards I like, and maybe they'll pan out, maybe they won't, but either way, I get to have that janky little bit of fun once in a while where nobody sees it coming, and that to me is worth the $2 or $3. Guys, have a great day today. Thanks for hanging out with me on the channel. Slam those comments down if you think I missed a few combinations, because I'd love to hear about it as well. See you guys tomorrow. I gotta be honest, I loved telling everyone about that winter chill with the mana short. When I pulled that off on the weekend, it was epic. A couple of goblins lived, everything else died. It was amazing. And no, I still didn't win the game, by the way. There was a 4-player game. But people were kind of like, hey, what card is that? And then they started reading the Winter's Chill. They're like, that's like a blue board wipe? When does blue... I said, hey, it's old school, man. Like, oh, I've never seen that card in my life. I love doing stuff like that. When you play with newer players who are building these like constructed decks and they've never seen reserve list cards like this, it's hilarious. My other deck that had a force field in it, and they're trying to hit me with these like giant 10-10s, I'm like, I'll take one. I'll take one. They haven't seen it. So those moments are just invaluable. Like, you can't calculate the wealth of fun you got out of pulling that combination off. That's why I think some of these low-end reserve list cards, you know, you're going to spend $30 and you get, you know, 12 or 15 cards at a couple of bucks a pop, or 8 or 9 cards at like $3 or $4. But the value you can get out of those cards, playability and possibly monetary later, incalculable. It's just crazy stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here at the end. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Have a chilling day, man. You guys deserve it.